Whiskey, Smoke, and Wicked Schemes, The Ballad of Diamond May. A classic western tale of love, lies, and six-shooters. In the dusty frontier town of Buzzard Gulch, where men were tougher than $2 steaks and twice as hard to swallow, there lived a woman who could make a preacher forget his prayers and a banker open his vault with just a wink. They called her Diamond May, though her given name was May Olivia West, and she was the kind of woman who could start a stampede just by sashaying down Main Street. May had been married once, for about as long as it takes a tumbleweed to blow through town. Her late husband, God rest his ornery soul, had been shot dead in a poker game after 8 months of wedded bliss that felt more like being bucked off a Bronco every morning. Since then, May had sworn off men like a reformed drunk swears off rock-gut whiskey. The very thought of courting again made her feel like she'd rather wrestle a rattlesnake in Sunday clothes. But Diamond May was nothing if not a woman who attracted trouble like honey draws flies, and trouble had a way of finding her even when she wasn't looking for it. The Telegraph Romance. Pearl Annie, the town's gossip queen and May's friend who ran the general store, had been jawing about some mysterious cowpoke named Black Bruce McGraw. According to Pearl Annie, this fella was slicker than a whistle, handsomer than a new saddle, and had more charm than a snake oil salesman at a county fair. May, honey, Pearl Annie had drawled while polishing the counter, this here Bruce is the bee's knees and the cat's meow rolled up in chaps and spurs. You'd be crazier than a bedbug not to meet him. Against her better judgment, which had gotten rustier than an old horseshoe, May agreed to exchange telegrams with this Black Bruce McGraw. What followed was a courtship conducted through wire messages that would make even the most romantic dime novel seem tame. But there was something mighty peculiar about Bruce's telegrams. They always came at the strangest hours, usually after midnight when the moon was hiding behind clouds like a shy schoolmarm. Sometimes the messages would reference conversations May was certain they'd never had, and other times Bruce would sign off with a name that made her blood run cold, CM. When May asked Pearl Annie about these mysterious initials, her friend's face went paler than milk in a thunderstorm. CM. Pearl Annie had stammered, suddenly finding the flaw mighty interesting. Well, I reckon that might be, his middle name. And what might that be? May pressed, her green eyes narrowing like a cat watching a canary. Could be Cecil? Cecil McGraw. Pearl Annie's voice cracked like a teenager asking a girl to dance. But when May pressed further, Pearl Annie clammed up tighter than a miser's purse, changing the subject faster than a quick-draw artist clears leather. The night that changed everything. The evening May was set to meet Black Bruce McGraw, she dolled herself up like she was heading to the governor's ball. She squeezed into her finest saloon dress, red as fresh blood and tighter than bark on a tree, and pinned her blonde hair up with the diamond combs that gave her the nickname. When Bruce finally moseyed into the Silver Dollar Saloon, May's heart did more flip-flops than a circus performer. He was tall as a lodgepole pine, dark as a moonless night, and had eyes bluer than a Montana sky. He wore his guns low and his hat lower, and when he smiled, May felt like she'd been hit by lightning while standing in a creek. But there was something off about Black Bruce McGraw, something that made the hair on the back of May's neck stand up like a spooked cat's fur. He kept glancing over his shoulder as if someone was fixing to bushwhack him, and when he talked, his voice had an echo to it, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. At the end of their evening together, which had been stranger than a three-legged horse but twice as intriguing, Bruce presented May with a small bottle of French perfume he claimed to have won in a poker game down in El Paso. "This here reminds me of you, darling," he'd said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Beautiful, mysterious, and dangerous as a loaded gun. May had accepted the gift with her trademark sass. "Well, honey, you sure know how to make a girl feel special. Most men just bring me bullets and broken promises." The telegram that shattered everything. Later that night, May sat in her room above the saloon, still wearing that red dress and feeling like she'd been struck by Cupid's arrow, or maybe just someone with good aim. She decided to send Bruce a telegram, something flirty and forward that would make him come running back faster than a Mustang with its tail on fire. The response that came back made her blood freeze in her veins. Telegram to Miss May West. Stop. Who are you? Stop. Do I know you? Stop. Never heard of. No meeting. Stop. Please explain. Stop. Bruce McGraw. May stared at that piece of paper like it was a death warrant with her name on it. She read it 3 times, each reading making less sense than the last. This wasn't the smooth-talking charmer who'd swept her off her feet just hours before. This telegram read like it came from a complete stranger. "Well, I'll be hornswoggled," May muttered, crushing the telegram in her fist. Either that man's got a memory shorter than a flea's hiccup, or there's more going on here than meets the eye. The investigation. The next morning, May cornered Pearl Annie like a sheriff tracking down a cattle rustler. Her friend was nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, and May could smell deception on her like cheap cologne on a traveling salesman. "Pearl Annie," May said, her voice carrying the kind of steel that made grown men reach for their guns, "you're gonna tell me what's really going on with Black Bruce McGraw, or I'm gonna start asking questions all over town, and you know how folks love to jaw about each other's business." Pearl Annie wrung her hands like she was trying to wring water from a stone. "Oh, May, honey, you don't understand. Bruce, well, Bruce ain't exactly, that is to say. Spit it out, woman, before I lose what's left of my patience. Bruce McGraw's got a twin brother." Pearl Annie finally blurted out. "Name's Cecil McGraw, and they're identical as 2 peas in a pod. But here's the thing, they ain't been on speaking terms for years, not since that business down in Tombstone." May felt like she'd been kicked by a mule. Twin brother? What business in Tombstone? But Pearl Annie had already said too much. She scurried away like a prairie dog spotting a hawk, leaving May with more questions than a schoolmarm has chalk dust. The confrontation. That evening, May decided to ride out to the McGraw spread, a hardscrabble ranch about 5 miles outside of town. She saddled up her mare, Duchess, a horse with more attitude than a saloon girl with a new dress, and headed into the gathering dusk. The McGraw ranch looked like trouble even from a distance. The buildings were dark except for one flickering lantern in the main house, and the whole place had the kind of quiet that comes before a thunderstorm or a gunfight. May knocked on the door with the confidence of a woman who'd faced down drunk cowboys and crooked gamblers. When it opened, Bruce McGraw stood there looking like he'd seen a ghost riding a pale horse. "May? What in the Sam Hill are you doing here?" But before she could answer, another voice called out from inside the house, "Bruce. Who's at the door?" And then May's world tilted like a wagon with a broken wheel. Another man appeared beside Bruce, identical in every way except for the scar running down his left cheek and the hardness in his eyes that spoke of violence and secrets. "Well, I'll be jiggered," May breathed. "You boys sure do run in the family." The truth unveiled. The twin who wasn't Bruce, Cecil, she presumed, looked at May with recognition that made her skin crawl like ants at a picnic. "So you're the saloon girl Bruce has been moon-eyed over," Cecil said, his voice carrying a sneer that could cut glass. "Mighty pretty, I'll give you that. But brother, you didn't tell her the whole truth, did you?" Bruce's face went red as a sunset. "Cecil, that's enough. May doesn't need to know about." "About what?" May interrupted, her hands moving instinctively toward the derringer she kept hidden in her corset. "About the fact that you boys have been playing me like a fiddle. About the telegram signed CM? About the fact that I can't tell which one of you sidewinders I actually spent the evening with." Cecil laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Lady, you don't know the half of it. See, my brother Bruce here is what you might call the respectable twin. Goes to church, pays his taxes, treats women like they're made of spun sugar. But me?" He stepped closer, and May caught the scent of gunpowder and danger on him like smoke from a brush fire. "I'm the McGraw brother who handles the family's less respectable business. And last night, when you thought you were dining with my saintly brother, you were actually keeping company with me." The revelation. The pieces fell together in May's mind like tumbling dominoes. The late-night telegrams, the way Bruce had seemed different, more dangerous, more exciting. The glances over his shoulder, the edge in his voice. She hadn't been courting Bruce McGraw at all. "You lying, two-faced, snake-bellied son of a sidewinder." May exploded, her temper flaring hotter than a blacksmith's forge. "You've been playing games with me like I was some empty-headed dance hall girl." Cecil grinned like a wolf eyeing a lamb. Now, don't get your petticoats in a twist, darling. I never claimed to be Bruce. You just assumed. But May was done talking. Quick as a striking rattler, she pulled her derringer and had it pointed between Cecil's eyes before he could blink. Mister, where I come from, a man who deceives a lady is lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. And where I come from, we know how to deal with snakes. The choice. Bruce stepped forward, his hands raised peaceful-like. May, please. Don't let Cecil drag you down into his world. His bad news, always has been. But what we had during those telegram exchanges, that was real. That was me writing to you, thinking about you, falling for you. But it was me you kissed, Cecil added with that wicked grin. Me you danced with. Me you felt your heart race for. So tell me, Miss Diamond May, which McGraw brother do you really want? May stood there in that lamplight, derringer steady as a rock, looking between two identical faces that housed two completely different souls. One represented safety, respectability, the kind of love that would last through drought and prosperity alike. The other offered danger, excitement, the kind of passion that burned hot as a wildfire and was just as likely to consume everything in its path. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows like bones in a jar, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled at the rising moon. The cliffhanger! Just as May was about to make her choice, just as the words were forming on her lips that would decide her fate and the fate of both McGraw brothers, the sound of approaching horses split the night air like thunder. Well, well, Cecil said, his grin turning nasty. Looks like our past just caught up with us, brother. Through the window, May could see torches approaching, at least a dozen riders coming hard and fast toward the ranch house. Who are they? May demanded, but she could see the answer in Bruce's terrified eyes and Cecil's defiant stance. Men who want us dead, Bruce whispered. Men who've been hunting us since Tombstone. The riders were close enough now that May could hear them whooping and hollering like Comanches on the warpath. In the torchlight, she caught the glint of drawn steel and the promise of violence. May, Cecil said, suddenly serious as a funeral, you need to choose right now. You can ride out the back with Bruce and live a safe, quiet life wondering what might have been. Or you can stay here with me and face whatever comes down that road together. The sound of spurs and gun leather filled the air as the riders surrounded the house. A voice called out from the darkness, cold, merciless, and familiar in a way that made May's blood run cold. Cecil McGraw. You and your brother come out, and maybe we'll make it quick. May looked at the derringer in her hand, then at the two men who'd turned her world upside down. Outside, death waited with patience of a vulture and the certainty of winter. Well, boys, May said, her voice carrying all the sass and steel that had made her legend from Dodge City to San Francisco, looks like we're about to find out what Diamond May West is really made of. She cocked the derringer with a sound like fate clicking into place. Because when the chips are down and the devil comes calling, there's only one thing a girl like me can do. To be continued. The moral of the trail. In the wild frontier of the heart, where truth and deception dance together like shadows at sunset, we learn that sometimes the most dangerous love is the one that makes us question who we really are. When faced with choosing between the safety of certainty and the thrill of the unknown, remember that the trail less traveled often leads to the most spectacular views and the deadliest drops. For in the end, it ain't the horse that makes the cowboy, but the courage to ride when the storm clouds gather and the thunder rolls. Love, like a good horse, requires trust, understanding, and the wisdom to know when to hold the reins tight and when to let them run free. But when deception clouds the trail and danger rides hard on your heels, sometimes the only choice is to face the music and dance with whatever devil comes calling. As Diamond May always said, when life gives you lemons, make sure you've got the sugar and the whiskey to go with them, and a loaded gun, just in case.